The great hall was so large that Elena could barely see the far walls. Crystal towers stretched up into darkness, each one holding alien beings who stared down at her with cold eyes. The air smelled like metal and something sweet that made her nose wrinkle. She stood straight and tall, wearing her dark blue uniform with the Earth symbol on her shoulder. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had been to many strange places, but nothing like this. The Galactic Council chamber was built from living crystal that glowed with soft light. It floated in space near the center of the galaxy, where billions of stars painted the darkness outside the clear walls. Today was Judgment Day for humanity. 847 different alien species sat in judgment. Some looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others were made of gas and light, floating in glass containers. The tall, thin ethereals ruled over them all with their pale blue skin and black eyes that seemed to look right through her soul. Elena looked at the other humans standing with her. Captain Rodriguez kept his hand near his weapon, though they all knew it would do no good here. Dr. Chen held her data pad tight, full of facts and numbers that the Council did not want to hear. Behind them stood 20 more Earth representatives, the best and brightest humanity could offer. It was not enough. The ethereal prime floated above them all, its voice speaking inside their heads without sound. Human delegation, you stand accused of crimes against galactic peace. Elena had heard this before, but it still made her angry. What crimes? Growing too fast? Asking too many questions? Building ships that work too well? You refuse to limit your expansion, the prime said. Its mental voice was cold like winter air. You ignore breeding quotas. You develop military technology beyond approved limits. Most serious of all, you will not submit to council authority. Around the Great Hall, aliens made sounds of agreement. Clicks and hisses and strange music filled the air. Elena could feel their hatred like heat from a fire. Humans were young and new, only 200 years since first contact. They should know their place. But humans had never been good at knowing their place. We came here hoping to be partners, Elena said, raising her voice so all could hear. We brought new ideas, new ways of doing things. We offered to share what we learned. Your ideas bring chaos, spoke a Krillian delegate, its purple scales flashing with anger. You change too much, too fast. The galaxy has peace because we follow rules. Elena almost laughed. Peace. They called it peace when strong species bullied weak ones. They called it peace when new ideas were banned. They called it peace when anyone who did not fit their plan was pushed down. You want us to change our DNA, Elena said. Make us less aggressive, you said. Make us more like you want us to be. It is for the good of all, the Prime replied. Humans are too violent, too curious, too willing to break the natural order. The natural order. Elena had heard about their natural order. Old species on top, new ones on the bottom, smart species making rules, others following them, rich worlds taking from poor ones. It was not natural at all. It was just the way things had always been, because the powerful wanted to keep their power. We will not change who we are, Elena said. Angry sounds filled the hall. Some aliens called for immediate action. Others wanted to send human worlds back to the Stone Age. A few suggested worse things that Elena tried not to think about. The Prime raised one long hand, and silence fell like a heavy blanket. Then you leave us no choice. Submit to complete council oversight, including genetic modification to reduce human aggression or face expulsion from civilized space. Elena felt her heart beating fast. Around her, the other humans stood firm. They had talked about this moment many times on the long trip here. They all knew what the answer would be. We came here hoping for partnership, she said again, her voice steady and clear. Instead, we found a cage. She turned to look at her people. Captain Rodriguez nodded once. Dr. Chen closed her data pad. The others straightened their shoulders and lifted their heads high. Elena turned back to the Prime. "We refuse." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. She turned toward the exit and began to walk. Her boots made sharp sounds on the crystal floor. Behind her, 21 other humans followed in perfect formation. They did not run. They did not look back. They marched like soldiers who knew they were walking into history. The great hall fell silent except for the sound of human feet on alien stone. As they reached the massive doors, the Prime's mental voice followed them. It was full of anger and something that might have been fear. "Leave then, primitives, but know that you leave forever. Cross into council space again, and you will be destroyed." Elena stopped at the doorway. The other humans stopped behind her. She turned around one last time to look at the 847 species who thought they ruled the galaxy. "We'll see about that," she said. The doors closed behind them with a sound like the end of the world. In the great hall, the aliens sat in their crystal towers and told themselves they had won. They had no idea what they had just done. 6 months had passed since the humans walked out of the assembly chamber. At first, the alien species celebrated. The troublesome humans were finally gone. No more questions about old rules. No more new ideas that made everyone uncomfortable. The galaxy could go back to the way things had always been. But then, strange things started happening. Commander Zektal of the Krillian fleet was the first to see something that did not make sense. His patrol ships were watching the edge of Krillian space when sensors picked up movement near the human colony on Kepler 7. "Sir," his young officer reported, "there's a ship approaching the planet." Zektal looked at the screen. The ship was unlike anything in their databases. It was long and silver, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. It moved without any visible engines, and their sensors could barely detect it. "Is it human?" he asked. "The signatures are strange, sir. But yes, we think so." Zektal ordered his fleet to intercept. The humans were supposed to be gone. If they were still here, they were breaking council law. But when his ships arrived at Kepler 7, they found something impossible. The human colony was empty, not destroyed, not abandoned in panic, but carefully emptied. Every building was clean. Every machine was turned off properly. Even the trash was gone, and the silver ship was loading the last humans onto its hull like they were going on a vacation. "This is Commander Zektal." He broadcast on all frequencies. "Human vessel, you are in violation of council space. Surrender immediately." The silver ship did not answer. It did not even slow down. Zektal ordered his weapons to fire. Plasma beams that could cut through battle cruisers hit the human ship dead center. The beams just bounced off like raindrops. The ship's hull shimmered for a moment, then returned to its mirror-bright silver. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "our quantum locks won't hold them. The ship is... it's like it's not really there." Before Zektal could respond, the human ship simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. His sensors showed nothing, not even a trace of where it had been. This same scene played out across the galaxy. Human colonies emptied with perfect order. Strange ships appeared to collect the people. When alien fleets tried to stop them, their weapons did nothing. The human ships moved like ghosts through space, untouchable and silent. The Vorthon Trade Federation was the first to notice the real problem. Their supply chains began falling apart. Factories that made food processors could not get the special crystals they needed. The crystals had always come from human suppliers, but no one had paid attention to that detail. Shipyards that built pleasure craft found themselves missing key components. Again, humans had been making those parts. Agricultural worlds discovered their soil treatment systems were failing. The systems used technology that humans had developed and maintained. "How is this possible?" demanded Trade Master Voron at an emergency meeting. They were just one species among hundreds. His aide pulled up data files on her screen. Sir, humans have been trading with us for 200 years. They became part of everything we do. They didn't just sell us things. They fixed our problems. They made our systems work better. The numbers were frightening. Humans had connections to 90% of galactic trade, not as rulers or controllers, but as the ones who made things run smoothly. They were the engineers who fixed what was broken. The inventors who found new ways to do old things. The traders who carried goods between species that hated each other. Now they were gone, and the galaxy was falling apart like a machine with missing parts. Deep space monitoring stations began reporting even stranger things. Far beyond the galactic rim, where only empty space should exist, they detected massive construction. The energy signatures were enormous, bigger than anything the Council had ever seen. "What are they building out there?" asked Dr. Keth Major, studying the readings. His instruments could not tell him. Whatever the humans were doing, it was beyond current understanding. The construction used materials and techniques that did not match any known technology. The Zalani, who prided themselves on being the galaxy's best explorers, sent a scout ship to investigate. The ship was fast and stealthy, equipped with the best sensors money could buy. It never came back. Emergency sessions were called across council space. Trade representatives demanded action. Military leaders wanted to send fleets to force the humans to return. Scientists begged for more time to study what was happening, but the ethereal prime just sat in its crystal chamber and stared into space. It had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. It had seen species rise and fall. It had maintained peace through strength and order. Now it was beginning to understand that it had made a terrible mistake. They were not just traders and inventors, it told its closest advisors. They were woven into the very fabric of our civilization. We expelled them like they were visitors in our house. But this was their house, too. The advisors said nothing. What could they say? The damage was done. Outside the council station, alien ships waited for orders that never came. In the empty space beyond the galaxy's edge, humans worked on projects that would reshape everything. The silence stretched on day after day like the calm before a storm, and in that silence, the galaxy began to understand what it meant to be truly alone. 2 years had passed since the last human ship disappeared from council space. The silence was complete and terrifying. In all of galactic history, no species had ever just vanished like this. When races were defeated, they begged for mercy or fought to the last breath. When they were exiled, they sent messages asking to return. But humans had done neither. They had simply faded away like morning mist, leaving behind only empty worlds and broken supply chains. The Androxian hegemony was the first to feel real pain. Their agricultural worlds were dying. For 50 years, humans had helped them grow food in the dry soil of their desert planets. Human scientists had created new ways to bring water from ice moons. Human engineers had built machines that turned sand into fertile earth. Now the machines were breaking down. The water systems were failing, and no one else in the galaxy knew how to fix them. "We need them back," said Chancellor Vex 9 to the emergency council meeting. His orange scales had lost their bright color from worry. "My people are starting to starve." Around the table, other species leaders nodded. The crystalline Ephira were facing their own crisis. Their meditation worlds, so important to their culture, were becoming poisoned wastelands. Human environmental engineers had been keeping the delicate ecosystems balanced for decades. Without them, the planets were dying. "Perhaps we acted too hastily," admitted Senator Krill Vor of the Mantid Collective. His insect eyes clicked nervously as he spoke. The humans were useful. Useful. The word felt small and wrong. Humans had not just been useful, they had been essential. Like blood in a body or air in the lungs, they had kept civilization alive in ways no one had noticed until they were gone. But it was too late for regrets. The humans were gone, and they were not coming back. The ethereal prime spent its days staring at reports that made less sense each time it read them. Border worlds near human space were reporting strange things. Lights in the darkness that moved in patterns that followed no known physics. Ships detected things that should not exist, then lost them again before anyone could understand what they had seen. "The readings are impossible," explained Chief Science Officer Tam Lin to the Emergency Committee. "Ships traveling near the old human territories report navigation failures. Their instruments stop working properly. Some crews say time moves differently when they get too close." Dr. Keth Major, who had spent his life studying alien species, presented his most frightening report yet. "We never understood humans correctly," he told the inner council. "We thought they were just another aggressive race, strong but simple. We believed we could control them like we controlled others." He paused, looking around the room at faces that showed growing fear. "But humans are not just fighters. They are creators. They do not just respond to challenges. They change the rules completely. When they face a wall, they do not try to break it down. They build a door where none existed before." The report continued with observations that chilled every listener. Human psychology was unlike anything in the galaxy. Where other species adapted to their environment, humans adapted their environment to themselves. Where others accepted limits, humans found ways around them. "We may have given the galaxy's most dangerous species unlimited time and space to surprise us," Dr. Keth Major concluded. "And humans love surprises." The committee members sat in uncomfortable silence. Outside the meeting room, the Great Council Station continued its slow orbit around the galactic center. Inside, the rulers of civilization tried not to think about what might be coming. Strange reports continued to arrive daily. A Zolani exploration ship detected massive energy readings from empty space, then lost all contact with their home base for 3 days. When communications returned, the crew could not remember what had happened during those missing days. A trading convoy carrying rare metals toward the galactic core found their cargo holds empty after passing near old human territory. The locks had not been broken. The security systems showed no signs of tampering. The metals were simply gone, replaced by small devices that no one could identify. Most disturbing of all were the messages that ships started receiving. Not transmissions that could be traced or blocked. Words that appeared directly on their computer screens, written in every language at once. "We remember who stood with us. We remember who stood against us. The old ways are ending. Choose wisely what comes next." No one could explain how the messages appeared. They bypassed every security system and defense network. They came to council ships and independent traders alike. Even the ethereal prime's personal vessel received them. The messages were not threats, they were promises, and somehow that made them more frightening than any weapon. The council held emergency session after emergency session, but what could they discuss? Send fleets to fight an enemy they could not find. Negotiate with people who would not talk. Surrender to demands that were never made. In the end, they could only wait and watch the empty space where humans had once lived. The ethereal prime stood alone in its private chamber, looking out at the stars. For 1,000 years, it had maintained order through strength and fear. Every species learned to follow the rules or face the consequences. But what did you do when a species chose to leave and write their own rules? "They are still out there," it whispered to itself. "Building something we cannot understand, planning something we cannot imagine." The silence from human space stretched on, day after day, like a held breath before a scream. And in that silence, the galaxy learned to be afraid of the dark. The silence broke on a Tuesday. It started with the quantum communication networks across the galaxy failing in a way that made no sense. The networks still worked, but suddenly every message could be read by anyone who wanted to see it. Secret military communications became public. Private business deals appeared on news broadcasts. Personal messages between lovers were displayed on government screens. Nothing was private anymore. Panic spread through council space as leaders realized their deepest secrets were being revealed to everyone. Trade deals that exploited weaker species, military plans to suppress rebellions that had not even started yet, agreements between the powerful to keep the weak in their place. The ethereal prime called emergency meetings, but what could be discussed when every word might be heard by anyone? Then the cargo ships started disappearing. Not destroyed or captured, but simply redirected. Automated freighters carrying rare metals and advanced technology would change course without warning. When rescue ships arrived, they found the cargo holds empty and the crews unharmed but confused. "Where did your cargo go?" demanded Admiral Kex Tar of a bewildered captain. "I don't know," the captain replied. "We were traveling normally, then the ship said we were going somewhere else. The cargo was just gone when we arrived here." Security recordings showed nothing. One moment the holds were full, the next they were empty. The missing items were always the same ones. Technologies that humans had originally developed but the Council had claimed as their own. It was theft, but theft that no law in the galaxy could address. On the third day of chaos, something impossible appeared above the Council station. A ship materialized out of empty space without warning. Not jumped in from hyperspace or dropped out of FTL. It simply appeared like someone had drawn it into existence. But calling it a ship was wrong. It was larger than the Council station itself, a dark sphere that seemed to drink in the light around it. Its hull shifted and moved like living metal, and space itself bent around it in ways that hurt to look at. Every sensor in the system screamed warnings. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement. Gravity detectors registered impossible numbers. The very fabric of space-time rippled like water around the human construction. Admiral Tex Vaughn, commander of the Council Defense Fleet, stared at his instruments in horror. "How is that thing even holding together?" His science officer's voice shook as she answered. "Sir, I don't think it's made of normal matter. The readings suggest it exists partially outside our dimension." Inside the council chambers, the ethereal prime felt something it had not experienced in 1,000 years. Fear. Pure, simple fear of something beyond its understanding or control. Then Elena's voice filled every speaker in the galaxy. Not transmitted through networks or broadcast from stations. Her words simply existed in the air wherever intelligent beings could hear them. "We have returned," she said, "not as petitioners, but as neighbors. The old rules no longer apply." The massive sphere began to change. Its dark surface flowed like liquid, revealing itself to be made of millions of smaller components, ships within ships within ships, all connecting and separating in patterns that followed no known engineering principles. As the Council watched in fascination and terror, the components rearranged themselves into perfect geometric forms, spheres within spheres, all rotating at different speeds. The energy output increased until their instruments simply gave up trying to measure it. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Keth Major from his observation post. "Matter cannot do that. Physics does not work that way." But humans had never been good at accepting what physics said was impossible. From the rotating spheres, smaller ships began to emerge. They moved through space like fish through water, ignoring gravity and inertia. Each one was different from the others, as if they were being created as they flew rather than built in factories. These ships spread throughout the galaxy faster than light should travel. They appeared over major worlds and trade stations, not threatening, but simply present. Watching. Waiting. The message was clear without words. Humans were back, But they were no longer the same species that had been expelled 5 years ago. They had become something new, something that could ignore the laws of physics that bound every other race. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. Military leaders demanded immediate action. Scientists begged for time to study what they were seeing. Politicians argued about responses that might not even matter anymore. But what could they do against beings who treated the fundamental forces of the universe as suggestions rather than laws? In the great assembly chamber where humans had once stood trial, the ethereal prime called for an immediate audience with Elena Vasquez. Surely there could be negotiations, demands, some way to return to the old order. Elena came. She walked through the station's defenses like they were made of air. Force fields that could stop battle cruisers parted around her. Energy barriers designed to contain antimatter explosions let her pass without slowing down. Security systems that could track a single molecule in space reported that nothing was there. She entered the assembly chamber alone and unafraid, the same chamber where 847 species had once passed judgment on humanity. Now it felt small and fragile around her. The aliens stared as she walked to the center of the floor. She looked exactly as she had 5 years ago, but something about her presence filled the vast space. She seemed to be more real than everything around her. "You wanted to speak with me," she said simply. The ethereal prime gathered its courage. It had ruled the galaxy for a millennium. It would not be intimidated by one human, no matter what impossible things surrounded her. "What are your demands?" it asked. Elena smiled. It was not a cruel smile or a victorious one. It was patient, like a teacher watching students slowly understand a difficult lesson. "We have no demands," she said. "We have an offer." The word offer hung in the air like a challenge. The ethereal prime had expected demands for revenge, threats of destruction, requirements for surrender. An offer was something it had not prepared for. "What kind of offer?" it asked carefully. Elena looked around the great chamber at the hundreds of species staring down at her. Some had their weapons ready. Others were trying to scan her with instruments that showed impossible readings. All of them were afraid. "Freedom," she said simply. The word caused immediate chaos. Delegates began talking at once in dozens of languages. Some laughed, others shouted in anger. A few made sounds of confusion that had no human equivalent. "We already have freedom," declared the Krillian representative. "We have order and peace." Elena nodded politely. "You have order, but order built on keeping people in their place. Peace maintained by making sure no one can challenge those in power." She gestured toward the crystal towers where the delegates sat in their assigned positions. Each species had a rank based on age, military strength, and political influence. The old ones commanded from the top. The young ones listened from the bottom. The system had worked for millions of years. "You asked us to limit our expansion," Elena continued, "to stop asking questions that made you uncomfortable, to change our DNA so we would be less curious, less willing to try new things." The prime shifted uncomfortably. Those demands had seemed reasonable at the time. Humans had been growing too fast, learning too much, changing too many things. "But you never understood what you were really asking," Elena said. "You were afraid of our questions because questions lead to change, and change threatens the way things have always been." Around the chamber, delegates began to realize this was not a negotiation. Elena was not asking for permission or seeking approval. She was explaining something that had already been decided. "In the 5 years since you exiled us, we learned things that your science says are impossible. We met with species you have never heard of, who live in dimensions you cannot reach. We discovered that the universe is far larger and stranger than any of us imagined." Elena paused, letting her words sink in. "And we learned that your way is not the only way." Before anyone could respond, the air in the chamber began to shimmer. Holographic displays appeared showing star systems throughout the galaxy. But these were not recordings or projections. They were live feeds of what was happening right now. On world after world, human ships were making contact with local populations, not with governments or military leaders, but with ordinary beings who had been living under council rule, scientists who had ideas they were not allowed to explore. Engineers who knew better ways to build things but were forbidden to try. Young beings who dreamed of seeing the stars but were told they must stay in their assigned roles. To all of them, humans were making the same offer Elena had brought to the council. "Choose," Elena said. "Stay with the old system that keeps everyone in their place or join us in building something new." The displays showed the responses. Some beings chose to stay with what they knew, but many others stepped forward to accept the human offer. As they did, something amazing happened. Human technology began integrating with their minds and bodies, not changing who they were, but expanding what they could do. Engineers suddenly understood how to build ships that could travel between dimensions. Scientists gained access to knowledge that opened entirely new fields of study. Artists discovered ways to create beauty that touched the soul directly. "This is impossible," gasped Dr. Keth Major, watching the feeds in amazement. "You cannot just give away advanced technology like that." "We are not giving away technology," Elena corrected. "We are sharing understanding. There is a difference." More displays appeared, showing human ships throughout the galaxy. But they were no longer just human ships. Beings from dozens of species were working together, combining their different abilities with human innovation. They were building things that no single species could have imagined. Krillian's strength merged with human creativity to build structures that reached across star systems. Zilani exploration skills combined with human curiosity opened pathways to distant galaxies. Even the peaceful Ephora found their meditation enhanced by human technology, allowing them to achieve states of consciousness they had never dreamed possible. "You are destroying our civilization," the Prime accused, but its mental voice lacked conviction. "No," Elena replied. "We are offering your people something better than civilization. We are offering them evolution." The feeds continued to show the transformation spreading across the galaxy. It was not conquest or force. Every being made their own choice. But when they saw what was possible, when they experienced what life could be like without artificial limits, most chose to join the human network. Species that had been enemies for millennia began working together. Young beings who had been told they were too inexperienced to matter found themselves leading innovations that changed everything. Old ones who had thought they knew all there was to know discovered whole new realms of possibility. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained galactic order for millions of years began to dissolve, not through war or rebellion, but simply because people found something better. In the assembly chamber, delegates began to understand what was happening. Their systems of control were becoming meaningless. Their positions of power were evaporating like morning mist. Not because humans were taking over, but because their own people were choosing to leave. One by one, the crystal towers began to empty. First the younger species, then some of the older ones. Even a few delegates from the most traditional races quietly gathered their belongings and left. The ethereal Prime watched its empire crumble and felt something it had never experienced before. Not anger or fear, but a strange kind of relief. For 1,000 years it had carried the burden of keeping the galaxy in line. Now that burden was being lifted from its shoulders. "What happens to us?" it asked Elena. "To those who choose not to join you?" Elena's smile was gentle and genuine. "Nothing happens to you. This is not about punishment. If you want to keep the old ways, you can. But you will find fewer and fewer who want to follow them." The Prime looked around the great chamber that had once held representatives of 847 species. Now only a few dozen remained. The rest had chosen something new. "The age of the Council is ending," Elena said softly. "The age of infinite possibility is beginning." She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the nearly empty hall. As she reached the doors, she paused and looked back one last time. "The universe is vast and full of wonders," she said. "Come explore it with us when you are ready." The doors closed behind her, but this time it felt like an opening rather than an ending. Outside the station, the great human sphere was changing again. It stretched and grew, becoming a structure so large it could be seen from neighboring star systems. Other ships from across the galaxy were approaching it, carrying beings who had chosen to join the network. The ethereal Prime sat alone in its crystal tower, looking out at the transformation of everything it had once ruled. The old order was gone. In its place, something unprecedented was growing. A civilization based not on control, but on cooperation. Not on keeping people in their places, but on helping them reach for the stars. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Prime smiled. Perhaps it was time to see what wonders the universe really held.